Kamille, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, stoked to be here. Always love talking to you, girl.
Oh my gosh. So, if you don't mind me sharing with the audience, you and I are neck and neck about to have babies together, basically, which is super exciting.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that beforehand. I'm sure that's fair game. Is that cool?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so you and I have such a great relationship, and we've been working together for a really long time.
Mhm.
And what I want to talk about today is really where flexibility fits into high performance. Because as I've learned through birthing humans and growing a family while also growing a business, which I feel like needs me just as much as a toddler most days.
Mhm.
There is so much flexibility that's required to do just about anything. And this space is completely left untouched, especially when it comes to real estate agents, because I'll talk to my real estate agent moms who are at a similar place in life as I am. And they're like, I just can't get anything done. And I feel like it's because I'm a failure. Like, I'm just not working hard enough. It must just be me. When really it's like we have to identify different seasons of life. And so that's what I want to talk about today and just see where we can make a little bit of progress and feel better about just where life puts us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both you and I being in a literally physical and emotional space, right? We're about almost 9 months along. So right behind you, there's that October 17th date. You're due November 16th. I'm
Yeah.
due like November 18th. So it's very fresh on my mind and my heart because I'm going through it. And I'm so uncomfortable right now physically. You and I were just talking about that before we got on the call. And yet, to the outside world, I'm just seen as okay, she's still performing, right? She's still doing her job. I
Yeah.
do peak performance coaching for entrepreneurs and top real estate agents. And so people ask me all the time, like, man, how are you holding it together? And I was like, oh, I'm not, because by the time we're done with our call, I'm taking a nap. You just don't see all of that. But it took me a while to get to that point. And this is my first pregnancy. I know it's your second. So I'd love your insight as well as, the lessons you've learned along the way and how you've applied that second time around. But as someone who's going through it the first time, the main mantra I would say that keeps coming to mind for me that I've used even before getting pregnant was be really stubborn about your vision, but extremely flexible with your approach.
Mm.
And that's just part and parcel to, I think, really wise leadership and really wise entrepreneurship. Because as you know, even since the pandemic in 2020, and even prior to that, the people who have done really well in their business and in their life are willing to adjust to the winds. Now, that doesn't mean you compromise your values. It doesn't mean that you have to change who you are. That's why I say be stubborn about your vision, because there's a vision you have for your life. There's something you want for your family. I'm not telling you to change that. But how you go about it, to be honest, it's probably going to change
Yeah.
with the stuff you need to deal with. So, like with you, with your son, I'm sure as he's also gotten older, developed more of a personality, he's got different things going on. You've had to do a lot of flexing that you didn't have to do prior to having him in your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so that's the personal side of it, right? So as he's grown and developed and those first years are so chaotic. I feel like once the children go into school, like grade school, like you're good to go. Like there's someone else's mission at that point, at least during Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, right? But for us, when during these early times, and as you'll find too, like every 3 months is a new season, and
Mm.
so there's never done. Like you can create the perfect schedule or the perfect expectation for what productivity looks like for you in that season, and then literally 3 months goes by and something changes and everything has to be redone, and it's
Yeah.
exhausting and it is so overwhelming. But I think that because like no one really talks about that, people assume that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I don't know why we're fed this fallacy or we're conditioned that success is this linear progression, right? You sign up for the coaching program, you learn all the things, and then boom, your business should just go up. And as you all know, you see it all the time on social media or Instagram and these memes, success always kind of looks like a roller coaster ride.
Right.
Um, and one of the things that I'm always talking about is that I see success and progress more like a loop. And I had a client one time who helped me describe it really well. So think of yourself as like kind of on a carousel ride. And let's say you're starting at that middle part of the carousel, right? The one closest to the pole. And
Mhm.
it feels the fastest because the circle's spinning really, really fast. And I want you to think of one point on that carousel ride as something that you experience over and over and over in your life. So let's say you struggle with rejection and then you learn something about rejection and then you move on to the outside part of the carousel and then you go around again and you experience rejection again. Now, hopefully at this point you have a different vantage point, a different perspective because now you're on the outside ring because you've experienced it once.
Mhm.
But what happens is people think, well, I'm experiencing rejection again. I thought I learned this lesson. What's going on? And that's because they think it's linear versus a loop, which means you know you're progressing when you can have a different perspective on almost the exact same situation. And to me, that's progress, right? That's really what we want. So if you can honestly say, you know what, I know this person or I've been here before, but I feel differently about it, or I'm thinking differently about it, give yourself props for that. And I think that's the big formula that I'm recognizing in this season for me to succeed. I call it greatness and grace because I'm not willing to give up my pursuit of greatness, whatever that means for me, right? I still have these big goals. I still want to do these amazing things, and I get to do that inch by inch every single day. But I have to give myself grace because there are just days that I can't stay awake for the life of me. As you were talking about, the brain fog is real.
Uh-huh.
I put the cereal box in the freezer the other day, and my husband was like, "Why is there cereal in the freezer?" And I'm a smart woman, I think, but in that moment,
No.
I had to give myself grace, right? But when I'm beating myself up because I'm not perfect, I'm not showing up exactly what I need to do, or not all the dishes in the sink are put away, but yet I just crushed it on a video or a podcast or something. This is why I say grace is so important because that's the energy you're going to need to continue to move forward towards greatness, especially in seasons that are depleting you of energy. Because, like you were saying, we all have different seasons we're in. You know, whether the person listening right now is in a season of my kids are exhausting or my kids are easy. Whatever season you're in, you're going to have to taper your energy needs based off of that. But to expect of yourself to always be like on, I think is just a recipe for disaster. And that's a big perspective shift that I've had, which is hard for a high performer. It
Well,
really is.
it's so hard because like I mean you just have to take 2 seconds on social media to see a little bit of hustle culture and see what other people are saying and like preaching and like you always have to be going at 110% in order to be successful. And I look back at this last year for me specifically and I have not been very I haven't really, I've been a lot more protective of my pregnancy experience this time around. Last time I was like shouting it from the rooftops. We were so excited to start our family. And I find myself in a different space this time around. And I think part of that was because like this pregnancy is just about done meeting. Like this has been so unbelievably challenging this
Mm-hmm.
year, but then I look back at what I've been able to accomplish in
Mm-hmm.
this last 9 months while only operating at like 40 to 60%. Like literally that's all I can do. And it's equal parts disappointing to think of like, wow, the traction that I could have had. Or like where was my decision making off because I wasn't totally there, right? There have been times where my decision making even has been off, and which is decision making is such an important part of achievement, I think. And so there's that part of me where I'm in the gap a little bit, where I'm like, oh, look at what I could have done, and then the other side of me where I'm like, but look at what I did while just having to honor this season of life and take it slower, as painful as that was.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the outside world, and because that is so overlooked, you have to really avoid getting in the trap of like, oh, I just didn't work hard enough, because that's just not the case at all. It's just not true.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I would say that letting go of control and realizing that you really don't have full control is also one of the most difficult things for a high performer. Be it male or female, the idea is, well, I control my schedule, I control my time, I control my progress and this. And yes, to a certain degree, but there's also a lot of outside things that you don't control. And that's what I meant in a way by grace. There's grace for yourself, but I also think there's a grace to life, meaning, for you and I, we talk about this all the time. Like you said, you've been able to progress massively in your business, perhaps operating at only what, 40 to maybe 60% capacity, because there's also like a really beautiful gift to life if you believe in it, right?
Yeah.
That things will work out to some degree. Like, and I can't scientifically explain that, but through experience and wisdom, I've just seen it happen over and over for those who are willing to focus on it. And
Yeah.
so I think a big part of it, you said it, you hit it right on the head, is being grateful for the progress you have made. And I want to touch on something that I know it wasn't really our topic, but I think it should be talked about a little more often, especially if you are someone who identifies as a female or you have more female energy and you're listening to this podcast right now. I think what's difficult about high performance is most of what we consider high performance is still defined through more of a masculine gaze.
Oh my gosh, thank you for bringing this up.
Oh,
Yeah.
good, good. Well, and I'm
Because
not.
I lack the language here, so I'm not even sure how to articulate it.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. And this is not man bashing or masculine bashing at all. But what I am saying is that right now, the definition of how we mostly think about high performance, right, is imbalanced. And what I mean by that is, like I said, it's this very linear progression. We have constant energy, always get it done, be consistent, be routine. And those are beautiful things. That tends to be more of a masculine, I would say, identified definition. And just for biological purposes, like males do have differently designed brains, right? Typically, you'll see a guy very good at compartmentalizing. If they're focused on one thing, they're only focused on one thing. It's very hard for them to switch. Most people who identify as female or are born with that female design brain, we flow. We find connections in a lot of things, which is why often you can see women kind of what they call multitasking. I can do one thing while thinking of another, while thinking of another. And then my husband thinks I'm like all over the place. But to me, it's like, no, I'm just paying attention to multiple things at once because I'm literally designed differently. So
Mm-hmm.
why do I bring this up? Because what is considered high performance from, let's say, a feminine perspective can be redefined in so many different ways. That can be, I was able to connect with this person so much more deeply. Yeah, okay, maybe I wasn't as efficient, but the connection was deeper. So is that considered high performance? And if not, why not? Right? Why can't deep connection be considered high performance? Why is it only ever about numbers and high efficiency? Or, I was able to do multiple things and have a pretty productive day. I didn't necessarily focus on just one thing. Is that not considered high performance? How come only singular work or massive obsession with only one thing is considered high performance? And so that's what I mean by, especially if you are someone who identifies with more feminine energy, what would it look like for you to maybe redefine high performance for your life based off of your personality and your strengths? It doesn't always have to be, the majority of business books you read out there, which again, they're good, but it is through more of a masculine gaze. It's imbalanced, is essentially what I'm saying. I hope this makes sense. I don't mean to go
Oh
too
my
far off
gosh.
the edge, but
No, I think it's perfectly in alignment. So like for example, I was chatting with an agent colleague who's similar to me with children in age. Her kids are a little bit older, and her responsibilities inside the home are total and complete
mm,
because of their home dynamic. And what happens is you're fed, just like you said, you're fed this like fallacy almost of what success needs to look like in real estate specifically. And it has to be very metrics driven. And one thing that I've always been really obsessed with, and this is what I shared with her when she was struggling with this, with not being able to hit the same numbers that she may have been able to if she had been like that 20-year-old guy sitting at home able to pound the phones for 6 hours a day, that kind of thing.
right.
um what I was sharing with her is understanding in the weight loss community how they have non-scale victories. Have you heard
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah.
I love that concept so much. And so I think about that all the time in business and thinking, and it's non-production victories, right? It doesn't have anything to do with the number of transactions or the number of units or the number of like in your bank account, even because before those results ever come, you have to make changes into how you are managing your energy and your time on a day-to-day basis. And it's those big shifts that allow you to create cooler results down the road, or maybe not cooler, but those more monetary driven results down the road, which is really neat. And so for someone who might be in her shoes, just being able to take to take advantage of the 2 hours of time that she has to actually do any work that day. She gets nap time. That's it. She's going to be able to work on nap time for 2 hours. She's got to focus on her most important things. Maybe her biggest victory that month is identifying those two or three top priorities that she can focus on during that time and then sticking to it, not letting the laundry in the back of her head take her away, or not letting these a gazillion other things that are on her mind take her away from just allowing herself to focus on that one given thing. Like that in and of itself is massively impactful to your ability to create results, and it has nothing to do with metrics.
Yeah.
But again, like this is not something that's ever really talked about because it's so nuanced, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a simple way to look at this, and I often will talk about this formula with my clients, is we all know ROI, which is the quantitative measurement of return on investment. And that's vital, especially for agents, for people who are working with clients, helping them assess if this investment property makes sense for them. And even for you as a business owner, figuring out, okay, if I'm going to spend X amount on this program or on this thing, what is the potential investment that can return in 3 years, 5 years, et cetera. So that quantitative measurement is vital. But there's another measurement that most people don't talk about, and especially not on a global or economic scale because it sounds too woo-woo, but I think it's just as important, is what I call ROE, which is return on energy.
Yeah.
And that's more of a qualitative assessment. And I tell my clients all the time to always assess both of these things before you jump into anything. Because just because something has great potential ROI, but if it does not have high ROE, meaning it drains you of energy to potentially do this, and I think a lot of people experience this, right? It's like, yeah, I made a great commission with that client, but I will never work with them again. Like that was so draining, was not worth it to me, right? Because it sucks the life out of you for that
Yeah.
season. And that's what I mean by ROE, and that's more the qualitative side. And that would be more considered more of the feminine, I guess, aspect of high performance. But I'm incorporating a lot of that into how high performers make decisions because you need both of those things. Is it a high return on energy and is it, a high return on your financial investment? If it's both of those things, man, that's money. Like go for it. But if one is missing, okay, I'm not saying don't go for it, but we need to really assess, is the energy you're getting worth the lack of financial return? Or is the abundance of financial return really worth the energy drain that it's going to cost you? And everyone's got different answers, and that's fine. But I think to have a balanced assessment, you need that. And so it's the same thing with your life and your business for, again, the woman or the man who is not giving themselves grace in the season. They're just depleting themselves of energy. I really want you to look at, well, what am I doing to fill my cup? Because you're running around doing 100 different things for other people. And you know this, Stefanie, because I would tell you all the time, like, what are you doing for you this week? Like, because I know all the stuff you're doing for your business, but I was like, what do you need though, girl? Like, do you need a day away? Do you need to go for a walk? And it's guilt free. This is just like, I need me time because it doesn't make sense to drive your car, run your engine. You're not putting gas in the tank. Like, that's not high performance. That's not how that works. But especially for, I see this a lot more with mothers, not to say that fathers don't experience this, but I see it more with women. They get into martyrdom syndrome and they just run themselves ragged. And like you said, then they still think, oh, it's still never good enough. But you have to fill your cup first. Like it's not selfish at all. It's just smart. It's the only way you're going to survive this entire journey.
It's so true. And I can't tell you how much I still struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had so many conversations about this where you're practically shaking me by the shoulders and you're like, Steph, you will not be able to go on. Like you literally won't be able to go on if you don't take care of this, meaning me. and for me, like you think about pregnancy specifically, and obviously there's a thousand other, you could have health of a family member where you have to step in. You could have your own personal health in a thousand different ways. There's a thousand different places where this might pop up. But for me, in my experience right now, pregnancy should be natural. This is my mindset. Pregnancy should be natural. This has happened for millennia. I should just be grateful. I should suck it up and just be glad that I have the opportunity to grow my family. But also acknowledging like those things can be true, and it can also cause you to have to literally operate at a totally different level than you're ready, or that than you typically would. And it's also going to cause you to have to approach your health and self-care in a totally different way. And for me, that's very uncomfortable, because any kind of investment in myself or any kind of grace feels like slack. Like I am so used to like if I don't, just my natural state of being, and this is something that I'm constantly having to work through, is if I'm not feeling a certain amount of pain, then I'm not working hard enough. But in different seasons, that's just not going to be sustainable, or as you say, smart. And so one place where I've been able to kind of really do some work here specifically, and I would love to hear your thoughts here, is leaning into feeling worthy enough to ask for help. Right. So a big thing that we did this year was we brought on our housekeeper to come once a month or once a week. So like someone assisting us to clean the home once a week. Which, I mean, you asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have laughed, and you like, that is so outrageous. That's so much, like that's way, whatever. But understanding now the importance of your environment and not having to worry about like the things that you feel like should be getting done but aren't getting done. You have to value yourself enough to find ways to bring in the help. And then there is that return on investment there as well. Was that ROI or is that ROE, would you say?
Which one?
Is investing in help, or investing in like somebody to help take off like certain activities off of your, because you're investing in the energy that you get back, but it's also obviously a financial investment too.
Yeah, well, and you're right. It's absolutely both, because if you were looking at it from the perspective of, let's say your hourly rate is XYZ, and then what you're paying or outsourcing is essentially your house cleaning once a week, what would take you maybe 4 or 5 hours now because of the energy level you have may take this individual 2 hours of full efficiency, right? And this is what they do. It's the only thing that they're focused on. Plus, and this is just more my mindset. When one can afford it, and my thing is always like, hey, if you're building out a business, outsourcing should be part of the budget at some point, right? So if anyone here is thinking like, well, that's nice for people who can afford it, you can afford it too. This is why we're helping you with your business to get you to that point, right? This is not like a far-fetched goal, but I see it as I'm just investing in another person's business. Like I see it as like I get to invest in this person's livelihood because this is their business. Their business is house cleaning. Their business is a mechanic. Their business is dentistry. I'm putting money in their pocket to help them grow their stuff. People put money in my pocket to help provide for my family. So I see it as this beautiful exchange. It's not like they're working for free. Right. And but go ahead. Sorry.
No. How do you allow yourself to do that if you've never done that?
I think this is where, again, the vision has to be very clear for this person, meaning what is the most important thing for you in this moment? So let's say you are in pregnancy and you're like, I'm exhausted. My health is compromised. I'm worried about, I have gestational diabetes or preeclampsia. And so me moving around doing all these things is only going to make the pregnancy worse. And my value right now is a healthy pregnancy and delivery. But I also want my family not to live in shambles, right? So that might be the vision. Okay, so my solution is I need help. I have to put my pride aside. I have to figure out something in my budget because my priority is my health. And then let's say the hygiene of my family. But this is where clarity on your vision is important, because that vision and your values, so these two things, what you see for you in your life, your family's life, and what you value is what's going to drive your decisions at the end of the day. All the other stuff is subconscious fears, belief systems, et cetera, right? And this is why I call it values-based decisions. The clearer you can get on what it is you value, then the easier it'll be. Doesn't mean it's going to be easier, but easier it'll be to put your pride and your ego aside. Because for most of us, if we're being very honest, that's what it is. I could do it. I've done it by myself. I don't need nobody's help. Like all of that is BS. We all, you know this stuff. It takes a community, it takes a village, it takes support people to do anything well. And it's just so much more fulfilling
Yeah.
when you have that community of people around you. So I think great leadership is when you can recognize who is way better and way smarter than me at this particular thing. Great. How do I bring them into the fold? I would be wary of the leader who's like, no, I know it best. I'm going to do it all by myself. You're going to run yourself to the ground eventually.
Mhm.
So, great leadership is the ability to humble yourself and say, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be the best at this right now. I know enough, but I need to delegate this to somebody. And so, if you want to see it as delegation versus receiving help, however you got to phrase it in your mind, go for it. But that's been huge, even for me, because I'm similar. So, I'm the eldest grandchild, the only girl on my mom's side. Grew up in a big family. Everything was always on me. So, I'm used to doing things on my own. Asking for help, not my MO, but to the point where I'll run myself ragged, right? And just last week, we had our baby shower, and it went from maybe 30, 40 people I thought was going to be in the backyard to like 130 people RSVPing all of a sudden.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. I love that for you.
Thank you. That's what everyone said until you're the person doing all the logistics, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
first of all, I can't fit this many people in my backyard. I'm already running low on energy. I still have a business to run, and I have no idea how I'm going to feed or where to place all of these people.
Yeah, I could see I was more loving the community and love
Same.
and support, but the logistically that's a challenge.
But see, that's the grace part you're talking about, right? It's like I didn't get to see that because
Mhm.
I was so like high performance mode. Like I got to get this together. It's got to be perfect. Everyone's got to be comfortable and happy, and there's got to be a theme, and there's got to be, you're thinking of 100 million things. And the truth was, I wanted to do everything. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do the grocery run. I'm gonna do the catering. I'm gonna do the gifts. I'm gonna do this. And I couldn't. I physically couldn't. Like I went to Costco to try to buy all the drinks. And then a Costco worker yelled at me. He was like, ma'am, you are pregnant. Please do not lift that crate. And I'm thinking, like, I'm fine. It's just Coke cans. I got this. And I literally have a random Costco worker telling me, like, please, ma'am, like, put that down. I will help you. I couldn't even ask help from the Costco worker. That's their job.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm so used to doing things by myself, right? Because you get in the zone, and I get it. For the person here who's like, well, I'm in the zone. I got to get it done. But there's a larger lesson to this sometimes when you can't do something. And this is where my theme for the year, every year I pick a theme, and I pick the word surrendered success, kind of a theme word, not even knowing I was pregnant. So this was way before that. And so it was this idea of pursuing success, but still surrendering to the things that I cannot control, which is very, very difficult for me, especially. And in that moment, I had to surrender. I physically could no longer lift that because I would compromise my health. But mind you, I'm also the person who, the same time last year, I was running a marathon. So this idea of I can't do something physical, it's just almost like two contradicting thoughts in my mind. So it was like you said, accepting the season I'm in. I had to get a reality check. I said, but this is such a gifted season. My body is
I
doing something
know.
so amazing. Like, and my doctor was the one who told me, like, the reason you're so tired is because it's like your body's running a marathon on a daily basis. You just don't have to actually run it. And I asked him, I was like, what do you mean? He said, the amount of energy you're using to create a human being is almost the same amount of energy and blood flow you use when you're on your runs. And that's when it finally clicked. I was like, oh, that's that surrendered part. There are things that I bet you've put into place with your family, things that you've built over the years that to you now seem like I don't have to put too much effort into it, but it's still running in the background, which means it's still taking up energy. You're the one who helped create that, though. And so I just want to, for the person listening, give yourself that credit, give yourself that gratitude for the work you've already done. Right. And that's what we forget because we always think, I could do more. I could do more. It's got to be more perfect. I got to do this. And you just might not be in that season. And that's okay. And the last thing I'll say about this, and I would love your thoughts on this too, Stefanie. I think once you grow in your leadership and your awareness as well of the role you play in life, sometimes what we perceive as our weaknesses is intentionally there so we can give other people an opportunity to shine. Because often you're probably seen as, oh, Stefanie's a leader. She's got all this. She doesn't need me. And it's such a compliment to people when someone like yourself goes, you know what? I can't do this. I would love your help on this, or I'd love your opinion, or I'd love your thoughts. And it gives them the space to like show up for somebody who they don't think needs any help, right? That vulnerability is really powerful as a leader. And so I just, I want to talk about that too, because there might be also a reason that you're hitting a wall is so you can give somebody else an opportunity to show up in that moment so they can grow in their character as well. And you could be contributing to that, but if you don't let them help you, you're blocking that opportunity for them. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
it does. And that's I don't know if I've that sounds like a familiar concept, but not one that I've applied in this space whatsoever. And so
Mm.
that's really beautiful, and it helps a lot. I wish that it didn't take that much to just allow ourselves to fall back on a village. And I know that part of this is just the way that our society is, and I know a lot of it's just the way that our culture happens to be just here where we are geographically. I want to think that other places or other groups don't have these same challenges. And so because of just from what I've read,
Mm-hmm.
not that I've experienced it, but just from what I've read, like the proverbial village I know exists somewhere for somebody. It just doesn't happen to be here for me, at least. So when we are asking for help, or when we are creating space and creating opportunities, this is going to sound so silly, but teach us what to say. What's the language that you use in
Mm.
order for it to feel good and for us to be clear on what we need, but also still maintaining boundaries that might be important to us as well? What
Yeah,
language do we use?
that's really, really good. So, depending obviously on the situation, but one of the things I like to tell folks, especially if I'm reaching out for help, is like, hey, I've got this vision or I've got this goal in mind. Here's what I want to accomplish. And then I kind of tell them the end game. And then I tell them, and you were the first person, and obviously, if that's true, who came to mind for me to reach out to for help because I think you're really great at X, Y, and Z. So it's a two-part thing. There's kind of like an end game, a goal I have. And then the second part is you're the right person, which means I've gone through a thought process and I've really decided you're talented at this, you're strong at this. And so there's a compliment there too, right? Because who doesn't like to be complimented? And like I said, be genuine about it. Don't,
Uh-huh.
butter the biscuit if it's not there. But because it's only to your
The
detriment if
butter
you
the biscuit. I've never heard of that. I love it. Sorry, continue.
yeah, all good. It's the pregnancy, the food. After this, I'm probably gonna eat something. um,
Sounds great.
but and then I tell them like, you're the person I wanted the opinion on, or I think you would be really great about this. So what are your thoughts? Would love your help. Are you open to that? And then I just open up the dialogue, right? Because it's also my way of gauging, are they even interested in supporting or helping? If not, all good. But my thing, and this is partly my entrepreneurial side, because even when I'm asking for help from family and friends, like for example, even with the baby shower, I was so blessed. I had so many girlfriends who came in and they were clutch. I mean, they just helped with so many things. But I knew what each of their strengths were. So I assigned them very specific things to do because I knew if I just are like, oh, Crystal, you figure this out, or Keisha, you figure this out, I'd be setting them up for failure, knowing that, but that's not what Keisha does. Like Keisha is great at this. Like she can make centerpieces. She's gonna go to Hobby Lobby. She likes all that stuff. But if I assign that to my other friend who much prefers like going to Costco and doing the grocery runs, she would feel frustrated. She'd want to help, but I could tell it's not her thing, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's also that part to it as well as whoever you're thinking of to ask for help, are they really the right personality? Again, ROE for them too, for that, right? If you need a friend to just listen, but they're not the ones who are good at listening, don't expect of them. You're setting them up for failure. But if you know somebody like, wow, they're so nurturing, they're giving, they're this, okay, I'm gonna have them help with that. So it's the same thing with business, right? We look for experts in different arenas to outsource particular skill sets to. I'm not going to give my video editor the responsibility of writing copy if that's not his or her talent. I think it's the same thing when you're outsourcing personal life is okay, I think this person would be good at this. Let me see if I can get their help with that. But I always talk about the common mission first, and then I complement their strengths so they know where exactly they fit in that puzzle. Because I think the hardest part for people saying yes to help or even asking for help is it's too vague. It's like, I just need
Right.
help. And people are like, okay, I want to help. What do you need help with? And you're like, I don't know, everything. So there's a little bit of, thinking and assessment and strategizing that'll have to go on your part too to figure out, all right, how or what where does this person fit in my life? And that's where the high performance part is going to serve you really well because you're probably thinking already 10 steps ahead of where most people would be in that process because you do it for business all the time, right? Okay, I need the transaction coordinator to do this, this, and this within my process of how I do a listing. So it's the same thing. I'm going to need a housekeeper or a chef or this person to do this, this, and this within my whole process of running my life. Because whether you know it or not, you have a process, right? It might seem like default to you, but there is a routine that you typically follow. I would say it'll be to your advantage to kind of sit back one day, have a cup of coffee, cup of tea, and just write down, okay, yeah, what are the things I do on a daily basis? And which ones do I really not like that I need to start eventually outsourcing, delegating, getting help with?
Yeah. Yeah, and for us, like back to the housekeeper like story, just from my experience, like I our time is so scarce. Like I'm like right now, like you and I are gonna be in the doctor's office once a week, right? Like we're gonna be doing all this stuff. We're trying to nest, we're trying to get ready for baby, we're doing all this stuff. And like I couldn't take any more time from Grady, from my son. Right. Like, and I couldn't take any more time from Bryce, like, because all of those things, all those tasks that this amazing woman is now helping us with,
Mm-hmm.
those were things that just, it takes time. And anytime you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So I think that it makes sense to make the ask. I love the way that you put it, and the way that you're articulating that is amazing. I think that totally makes sense. And I even think, oh, sorry, excuse me. I even think that you can modify that script or the way that you're expressing that, like with your partner, and say, hey, this is my vision for what I'm doing. This is what I need. Can you help me in finding the person for this? Or I want to loop you into, as I'm looking for a transaction coordinator, why this is important and who I think is going to be important here, or help around the house, whatever it might be. Right. So like there's so many ways that you can modify that. And that's what was going through the back of my mind. I love it.
Absolutely. And it was funny that you mentioned that as far as phrasing too. And this is something I learned from actually a relationship therapist a long time ago, especially when speaking to people who have more of a masculine energy or the men in your life. Often women will say like, "Oh, can you do this for me?" And for us, it's like a given, like, "Oh yeah, I got you, girl. Like, I'll do this for you. No problem. We can anticipate things." But that language is actually to the male brain often very confusing because what they literally hear is, do I have the ability to? Like, can I? Yeah, I can. But will I? Eh. So, with men especially, the phrasing needs to often be, hey, would you be willing to do this, this, and this for me? Because that's really what we're trying to say is like, I know you can lift that box. Because he'll be like, yeah, I could lift that. And then won't do shit. Right. And it's like, I just asked you if you could lift it. And he's like, yeah, I can lift that. It's like 50 pounds. I got it. But it's like, hey, would you be willing to move that box from here to here? And it's just an interesting linguistic shift. But I noticed it made a huge difference because I have mostly males in my family, like boy cousins and all of that. And I use that phrasing and it just like changed the game. Because before I get really frustrated, and I was like, well, how come you didn't do it then? But I
Right.
didn't ask the right question. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying all men are like that. Some get it, but that was a unique thing from a relationship coach perspective or a relationship therapist that said men and women hear things differently. And the language we use often is what we're normally hearing, but not necessarily what the other party understands. So,
Yeah. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Kamille, we're there on time, but I could just
Oh,
talk to
okay.
you for hours. I cherish our friendship. I
Likewise.
cherish the relationship that we have. I cherish you as a person. And I'm
Hmm.
so grateful to have you in my life. And I want to acknowledge you for showing up here with me, taking the time to talk about these things that matter while you and I are both like about ready to peace out on this
Mhm.
this last stage and go on to the next one. But I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me about this today.
Absolutely. I really hope it's been valuable to just any man or woman, any person feeling overwhelmed or beating themselves up right now for not performing at the highest level. Give yourself some grace. The pursuit of greatness is not easy. It's going to come with failures. Um, but if there's anything that I can give you is you're doing amazing. Allow yourself to see that. And like I tell you all the time, Stefanie, please, please, please take some time for you. Like if you don't fill your cup, you cannot serve from overflow. And that's going to be a really horrible place for not just your clients, but your family as well. So thank you, girl. One more month to go. We got this.
I love it. I love it. Wishing you the best.
Thank you. You too, Mama.
Thanks.